thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Monday, June 17th, and today is National Mascot Day, Rico. It's also National Cherry something Day. Son of a bitch. That fucking thing just jumped up in the screen again.
Jason.
I apologize.
Jason.
I apologize. Today is National Cherry Tart Day. National Apple Strudel Day, Rico. Everyone loves some apple strudel. And
shout out to Germany.
National Eat Your Vegetables Day. Interesting that that day came up in the same day as National Apple Strudel Day. And it's also National Root Beer Day, Rico. You don't like root beer? You're tripping. Well, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above on your screen to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. But kicking it off first, that's right, is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte, the Quasimodo caretaker, the man who has bad hair days and loves to put a cap on it, and that ain't no cap. That's
there are
right.
no bad hair days over here, Jason. None.
And that ain't
Zero.
no cap. That's right. Is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte. And also, too, I do want to wish both of you, Mathieu St, Germain, and you, Rico, a very, very, very happy Father's Day.
The same to you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, and shout out to all the dads watching and all that good stuff.
You being the father of Republican bullshit. Happy Father's Day.
Yeah, that's right. Father of all truth. It's cute.
No, he's the father of Republican bullshit only because they don't believe in abortion.
Whoa.
Oh,
that's because we believe in saving lives, bro.
Anyways, whole lot of legislative drug talk went down last week in good old tobacco country. Down on Tobacco Road, where a North Carolina Senate committee agreed to rules for hemp-derived consumables, and House members moved to crack down on the sales of and use of quote-unquote gas station heroin.
Sounds like gaslighting to me. Sounds like gaslighting to me.
North Carolina's state house fast-tracked proposed legislation to make unauthorized sales of the opioid-like substance tianeptine. Is that correct? Tianeptine?
Sure.
I'm just going to call it.
Sounds right to me.
More commonly known as gas station heroin, a felony in simple possession, generally a class 1 misdemeanor. The unregulated drug is sold in dietary supplements commonly found in convenience stores, smoke shops, and online. But FDA, on its part, has warned against its sale and purchase, claiming that it mimics opioids and can lead to dependence and overdose, according to the FDA. House Bill 903, if passed into law, would make North Carolina the 12th state to effectively ban over-the-counter sales of the drug and move it into Schedule II controlled substance category, next to fentanyl, codeine, oxycodone, and dozens of other hardcore opioids, still considered less dangerous than cannabis, believe it or not. The North Carolina State Senate Judiciary Committee, on the other hand, was thanked by local entrepreneurs entrepreneur. I don't know.
Entrepreneurial.
Yeah,
There you go.
entrepreneur.
Oh boy.
Riley Thomas Dunn of Raleigh for considering a House bill regulating consumables containing THC from hemp. Dunn co-founded THC from hemp beverage company, and while testifying Friday, claimed not to be a lawyer or a lobbyist, but just a guy who discovered that you can drink THC instead of alcohol. He said his company's customers include believers, young families, and veterans who have been asking for regulation in this space for a really long time, because when done right, it is going to be a huge industry for North Carolina. It's true. The bill sets a limit on how much THC from hemp gummies, beverages, and other consumable products can contain, would prohibit sales to people younger than 21, in addition to passing out samples in parks or public streets. It would also make it illegal for people under 21 to buy these products or use fake IDs to try to buy them. The newly proposed hemp-derived consumables bill would similarly regulate products containing kratom, which is already banned from school grounds. For North Carolina, the bill seems surprisingly common sense. You know, a lot of common sense comes out of the South. Age limit, check. Limits on THC levels in the products, check. Ban distribution close to schools in public parks or public streets, okay. What's the catch? Well, North Carolina's House passed a version of the bill last year to address the rising kratom sales, but this round, with tianeptine and hemp-derived cannabis consumables now on board, it includes a section to create a death by distribution charge for selling or giving someone tianeptine that causes the person's death. In other words, sellers beware. While parents may gain a bit of security knowing that if for some reason one of these products makes it into their kid's school and hurts somebody, there will be some sort of corporate accountability paid. But I cannot believe in red North Carolina that part would make it into law without crazy pushback from entrepreneurs on the right. Gun companies are not penalized for mass shootings. More directly, since we're talking about tobacco country here, cigarette companies, they ain't paying for nobody's oncology bills. So my question is it not a slippery slope to push forward corporate blame on drug manufacturers here, even if they do cause harm to the citizens? I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks about this. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News. Let's talk about it.
I have a couple questions, Rico, because you kind of went all over the place with this story today. So
Did I really?
You're telling me that North Carolina is considering banning Delta 8, first of all, correct?
In a roundabout way. They said hemp derived. They didn't. No, they're not talking about banning it. They're talking about regulating it. Common sense regulation. Yeah.
Which would entail having an age limit and testing requirements. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, they're talking about banning what they call the gas station heroin, tianeptine.
Well, I don't even know what that is. Have you ever tried this, Rico? Mathieu St, Germain, you may have tried this.
Oh, I'm just amazed there's a drug I haven't heard of, dude.
That's what me too, bro. and they're selling it at gas stations in North Carolina. Why?
Yeah, it's already banned in 11 states. I had heard about this stuff from this guy. He was one of our clients. He actually owned like 4 CBD shops. Mm-hmm. He actually said that kratom, and he said this other stuff that they're calling gas station heroin. I'd never heard like the actual name for it. He said like he refuses to carry it in his shops, but a lot of people ask for it.
Wow.
Tianeptine.
Tianeptine. I mean, it just sounds like so many other things I just don't want to say.
It's just legalize mushrooms and weed and get people off all these horrible drugs.
Yeah. Right. Like I feel like these hemp regulations that they're coming up with make sense for actual THC, actual cannabis.
Yeah.
Like, why not just let cannabis go?
I just don't understand why they want to confuse with this tianeptine in regards with these cannabis compounds, because I have a feeling the North Carolina is one of the strongest markets in the country for alternative cannabinoid products, so per se. And I just don't see them, the legislature passing anything like this. I know that there's a big, strong lobby in North Carolina against this type of stuff, but I don't know enough about this. What'd you call it again, Rico?
Tianeptine.
I just want to call it Epstein Island. Because this just sounds crazy. AF.
I mean, you can call it what you want, but I'm not gonna call it that. Like, I'm gonna call it like, yeah, it's
the
it sounds like it's dangerous. Yeah, it sounds like it's one of these dangerous compounds that somebody found a loophole and started selling it because it.
But this compound is not cannabis derived, is it? Because I've never heard of it.
No.
Okay.
No, and that's what I was trying to like quickly research so that I could be a part of the commentary
Sweet.
on this.
Thank you, Yarrow.
Is that like I'm trying to make the connection that is like, why are we talking about hemp and this in the same breath?
It's because they put it all in the same bill.
It's a prescription drug used for depression in some European, Asian, and Latin American companies.
It's also used for irritable bowel syndrome, which is good because this article is giving me the shits because I don't understand how we take any underregulated chemical compound or intoxicant and lump it all together because this isn't a hemp derived product. And so I think what maybe they're trying to do is sort of just deal with some loopholes and some gaps, but there's no connection between this gas station heroin and hemp-derived intoxicating cannabinoids.
Bananoids.
Bananoids.
Oh, boy.
And but for the fact that they're both clearly underregulated and
unregulated.
But it doesn't come from this plant.
Well, I'll tell you what. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Rico.
I was gonna ask Jamie what her thoughts on this were.
Well, I was going to comment on your question, which was, what do you think about the slippery slope of holding, drug companies accountable for this stuff? And I think when I think about the Sacker family and, I don't know if you guys watched the documentary about the way they pushed opiates onto people and had them through some, pretty sketchy means, had them snow the doctors into thinking that these weren't addictive and that they were really safe and all of that. I think that's the behavior. It's not necessarily the substance itself, because those opiates do help people who are in pain. It's the way the company went about, promoting them. And so that would be the question about this substance. It sounds like it's being used legally in other places, and probably under the supervision of a doctor and maybe manufactured differently. The hard part without regulation is what you end up with could be snake oil. And it, brings me back to the vitamin C acetate stuff in vapes. Vapes are not inherently dangerous, but when companies do dangerous things, then they become dangerous. And this is where we need regulation on some level to keep the bad actors out. And yeah, I think companies should be held accountable when they do things knowingly. And that's what, came out of that opiate crisis, is we know that they were doing that knowingly. The other thing is, sometimes with innovation, you make mistakes and there isn't a nefarious intent. And even the vitamin C acetate, maybe they were like, oh, this is great. And they thought they were innovating. And then they find out, oh, maybe not so much. It's killing people. That's kind of the dark and light side of innovation. And that's where regulation is necessary. And holding people accountable means you don't just wing it, throw spaghetti to the wall, see what sticks. Oh, and if people die, oh, well. But I think about, in this country, we just have, a double standard, and it really just depends. It's not a double standard. It's just a standard for some people and a standard for other people. The standard, if you're black and brown, is, oh, you fucked up, you're going to jail. The standard for, anyone who's making money, you're a capitalist and we're just going to slap you on the wrist. and I think about, not to go completely on a tangent, but I think about the whole women's reproductive freedom conversation. And then we're like pro children. And then we're also going to let people shoot up schools and have these mass shootings, and we're not going to control guns. Right. Because guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? There's all these arguments.
That's so true. People kill people.
Yeah, guns kill people.
Republicans are pro-life until the baby comes out of the vagina, and then
no, they're not
go to prison.
They're pro birth. Right. Well, they care about the birth, because once the kid's born, if you want assistance, fuck you.
Hold on. I think
I agree, Jamie. It goes back to controlling women's freedom. It goes back really to the fact that women are the font of the mystery, and men, most of them, throughout time, have been small and scared, sought to control women and take away that mystery. Really, it goes back into the whole Abrahamic religion and the control of women. We see it in the South. We see it in the Islamic countries. We see it amongst hardcore or Orthodox Jews. We see the same exact threads, which is child abuse, corporal punishment of children, submission of women, and control of the polity to enable and continue class stratification. Keep the priest classes and those who are the landowners owning everything, and everybody else as their serfs.
Which makes me want to go to the drugstore and buy synthetic heroin and put myself out of my misery.
Well, I do just want to say two things on this. One of them being, I think it's important for everyone to remember that without men, women would just be woes.
Oh Lord.
Okay.
Speaking of woes, I just want to say controlling women that's a pretty heinous allegation. I'm guilty as charged, and that is why we have a set of pink handcuffs in the bedroom.
All right. Well, we're not going into none of that extraness today. It's Monday. It's the most important day. We're not going into that. But we do want to thank the C word.
Is that for your pegging moments? Is that what that's about?
Whoa, you guys are getting all off the rails over here today. We do want to thank the C word, though, okay? The C word, okay? Because he says a big what up to everyone with a poor relationship to their father. Shout out the C word.
It sounds like it was a fun day for Yarrow on Father's Day.
Yeah, it was. Yes, and on that, we're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back. You guys are getting out of control.
Everybody needs their tri-tip barbecued.
Oh man, that was weird. Hey, you America. Do I look like Sean Connery? Good morning, America. Saman Razani coming to you live from sunny Los Angeles, California, with the one and only highest host, Mr. Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast? You can find it on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. No excuses in 2024. If you haven't checked us out, check it out now. And also, check out what the Prophet's doing in 2024.
Oh, and we're back, you guys. And
I love it.
And we're back, you guys. We're back.
Up next, it's the highest Republican in every room, known for smoking the best weed in the world everywhere that he goes, and a huge supporter of fathers' rights.
That's right.
Here to break us off with the next story of the day. It is Jason Beck.
Oh, yes. Shout out to all those dads out there that got presents for Father's Day. And all the ones that didn't get presents, because ultimately, if you have a kid, that is a great present.
Maybe they weren't present.
Whoa. See, you just always make a bad, can't you just stop, okay? And this is a story, you guys, that people wanted some updates on, and we just got an update on this, and so here we go. The U.S. House of Representatives has approved a large-scale defense bill that includes a section to prevent military branches from testing recruits for marijuana, as a condition of enlistment has been left intact, despite opposition from the White House. While the White House committee on Tuesday blocked a number of pro and anti-cannabis amendments from floor consideration, the full chamber's approval of the underlying bill means the military marijuana screening section, as well as psychedelics report language, is advancing. The House passed the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, at a vote of 217 to 199 on Friday. Because the Rules Committee declined to make in order an amendment that would have eliminated the cannabis testing provision, this language remains intact in the approved legislation. Section 532, prohibition on cannabis testing for enlistment or commission in certain armed forces. Subject to Section A of Section 504 of Chapter 31 of Title 10 United States Code, the Secretary of the Military Department concerned may not require an individual to submit to a test for cannabis as a condition of enlistment of such individual as a member or the commission of such individual as an officer of the armed force. The section mirrors a proposed amendment to DOD appropriations legislation last year that was led by Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida, my guy. And ahead of the markup on Tuesday, the White House Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, put out a statement of administration policy that opposed the NDAA's language, asserting that cannabis use in the military readiness and safety concerns because Joe Biden was running out of ways to turn off young voters. He decided to oppose any cannabis reform that didn't enrich big pharma, and Gaetz told Marijuana Moment on Tuesday after the OMB document was posted that DOD told lawmakers last year that marijuana is active ingredient in Delta-9 is the most common substance that appears on positive drug tests for active duty military service members, and several military branches have taken steps to loosen cannabis-related restrictions, including issuing waivers for recruits who test positive for their first time. The Rules Committee on Tuesday also rejected proposed amendments to prevent security clearance denials based on past marijuana use and codify that military service members can't be penalized for using or possessing federally legal hemp products and allow veterans to access state medical marijuana programs and eliminate the VA directive barring the department's doctors from issuing cannabis recommendations. While the panel didn't allow the VA-specific amendment to advance as part of the NDAA, the reform was approved by the House last week as part of the appropriations legislation covering military construction, veterans affairs, and related agencies, aka MILCON. Meanwhile, the House approved the NDAA report contains several other marijuana-related directives that were included in the proposal as approved by the House Armed Services Committee. One from Representative Nancy Mace out of South Carolina added report language for the NDAA that would require the DOD to issue a report on how many service members have been discharged due to marijuana. The committee directs the Secretary of Defense to submit a report to the House Committee on Armed Services and the Senate Committee on Armed Services and the number of service members discharged from service on the sole basis of marijuana use not later than December 1st of 2024. The report shall include the total number of service members discharged over the previous 10 years, the number discharged by year, and the state or location the service members reside at the time of discharge. An additional amendment from Representative Stephen Horsford, Democrat from Nevada, that was adopted by the panel would require DOD briefing on sentencing for cannabis-related offenses under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Briefing on sentencing of cannabis-related offenses under the Uniform Code of Military Justice in 2019, the U.S. Government Accountability Office reported that some disparities exist in different stages of the military justice programs, including at courts. The committee acknowledges and commends the department for its numerous initiatives to address identified disparities and to the reform of the Uniform Military Code, including implementing sentencing parameters pursuant to Section 539E of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2022. The committee further recognizes that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration has agreed with the Department of Health and Human Services recommendation to reschedule cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act, and to better understand potential disparities in sentencing outcomes for cannabis-related offenses, the committee directs the Secretary of Defense, in coordination with the Secretaries of the Military Services, to provide a briefing to the House Committee Committee on Armed Services no later than January 31st of 2025 on the following. Number 1, the number of convictions broken down by service for cannabis use for the last 4 fiscal years, disaggregated by time of service, rank and grade, sex, race, or ethnicity. 2, the number of convictions broken down by service for cannabis possession for the last 4 fiscal years, disregarded by the same things. And 3, the number of convictions broken down by service for cannabis use and possession for the last 4 fiscal years. 4, for each of the categories listed above, an assessment of whether any disparities exist based on the time in service, rank, grade, sex, race, or ethnicity in the reviewed sentencing of service members broken down by service. Mace has also touted a separate amendment that she said supports states' rights by incorporating findings from 38 state marijuana programs into research. The committee notes that to date, 38 states have implemented state regulatory programs for marijuana and therefore retain a level of knowledge and lessons learned regarding regulations and trends among producers, products, and consumer habits. The committee believes that the Department of Defense program established under Section 723 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2024 to the study of effectiveness of psychedelic substances and plant-based therapies, including marijuana, in treating post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injuries should incorporate findings and data collected by state-approved marijuana regulatory programs. The committee also directs the Secretary of Defense to provide a report to the House Committee on Armed Services no later than January 31st of 2025 on the extent to which the department is coordinating with states which have regulatory programs for marijuana and incorporating related findings and data collected by state-approved marijuana regulatory programs. The legislation also includes to report language to follow up on provisions in the most recent enacted NDAA that provide funding for DoD-led clinical trials on therapeutic potential of psychedelic for active duty military service members. The report language says the committee wants to ensure the establishment of the program is progressing without impediment and calls on DoD to provide Congress with a status update report by January 31st of 2025. Section 723 of the NDAA for fiscal year 2024 established a Department of Defense program to study the effectiveness of psychedelic substances and plant-based therapies in treating post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injuries. The committee wants to ensure the establishment of the program is progressing without impediments. Therefore, the committee directs the Secretary of Defense to provide a briefing to the House Committee on Armed Services no later than January 31st, 2025. And this thing goes on and on and on, and I'm just going to stop right there in the essence of time. And if you want to read the rest of this article, you can go on over to our website at www.high9news.com to learn about all of the rest of these things that they are talking about. This is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do y'all have to say about this?
You know why they're doing this, right, Jay?
Why?
They're having trouble meeting their recruitment goals because of the internet and everything that's been spreading. Like, everybody knows that these wars are just wars of resource theft. Mm-hmm. They're wars backed by the CIA, and nobody wants to join them, man. Like, I agree. If you're an 18-year-old kid, why do you want to go across the country to murder somebody? Yeah. To what end?
I totally agree with that assessment, Mathieu St. Germain, and just on that, I got a number of texts from different moms over the weekend that were concerned that their kids may get enlisted in the draft because, to my understanding, the Biden administration just automatically enlisted all children 18 and up automatically.
It wasn't
into
the Biden
the draft.
administration, Jay. It was Congress, and those bills passed because of Republican support. So, not gaslight everybody. Fair. Let's talk about the real. Like, the president signs the bill or vetoes it.
Well, he signed it.
Congress that actually authors the bill, sends it to committees.
He signed
votes on it.
He signed it.
That was a Republican-led Congress that okayed that bill, and I'm totally against that bill. And I'd also like to say,
I'm against it too, Matthew.
The FBI is having the same problem as the military. They're just having problems recruiting people because people realize FBI is just the secret police and has been basically responsible for having their boot on the neck of people of color, the anti-war movement, and the free speech movement since the 60s. Mm-hmm. Oh, shit. Yeah, the FBI just took Rico out, you guys.
Yeah, they did. They just took him out. They wanted him to be silenced, apparently. Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think, I have a son who's 25. You are required when you're 18 to register for selective service anyway. You don't qualify for student loans or any federal benefits if you don't do it. But he had the choice to forego all of those things. But you have to register for the draft. So whether they do it automatically or not, you're required to do it. The difference is this is supposed to be a country where we have personal freedoms. We don't have personal freedoms. They're taking away women's rights. They're taking away children's rights. And who is they? It's not the Biden administration, as Matthew says. It's Congress. And
I disagree with that.
Well,
it's okay though.
You
cool.
would because here's the thing, Jason. In my estimation, it isn't about right or left. It's about the fact that really big corporations, the military-industrial complex,
that's true,
the prison-industrial complex, the medical-industrial complex. These are all big corporations that control our government because after Citizens United was passed, it's big money that controls politics.
I think big money's been controlling politics long before that.
The aisle.
Big money's been controlling politics long before Citizens United, Jamie.
Yeah, but I think what she's saying is it gave free license for that dynamic to exponentially increase, and the dark money and the non-disclosed super PAC money and all of that has really mushroomed since that ruling. I think the thing that I would just hope our viewers understand is that I came of age during a period of active theaters of operation. We were at war. And what the United States often does is it has many military excursions and field trips, but never declares war. Doesn't have to categorize a lot of what does happen for soldiers overseas as wars. But I grew up during an era where there was a war, and I quickly learned about the Quakers, and I learned about what it means to be a conscientious objector, and I studied when was the last just war that the United States participated in.
Yarrow.
And so I just want to encourage young adults who are becoming 18 and thinking about what their relationship with their government is going to be, that first of all, there is something incredibly noble about civil service. Whether you're a park ranger, a military police, a Coast Guardie, or you're at a German base learning how to drink beer, there is nobility in public service. And soldiers go to die, and they don't get to own their bodies, and they don't get to own their choices, and they don't get to own their safety, and they don't get to decide what's a risk that's acceptable for them personally. And it's a pretty risky business to serve this country in a capacity where you don't get to just make your own decisions and choices. And so because of that, I really encourage people to explore their own personal relationship with how they might want to serve their country in a way that might not include violence, if that's something where they feel a calling for public service, because a just war in the United States arguably hasn't occurred since World War II. And there's an argument that even that, and the way in which how we allowed ourselves to get sucked into that war and how we chose to end that war were not entirely just at all. So yes, you could register for the draft. Yes, you're supposed to do it at 18. And yes, you can also let them know that you're a conscientious objector, that you're opposed to all war, and that while you may choose to protect yourself personally, you may choose to protect your family against a home invader, that you also can choose to not participate in organized and systemic violence.
Fair enough. And on that, we're going to keep this train rolling. We're going to roll right on in. That's right, to Mr. Yarrow Kubrin. He just got done standing on the soapbox, and we're going to prop him back up again so that way everybody can see him. He does cannabis. He does real estate. And when cannabis has some money, sometimes he does some cannabis real estate. That's right, is none other than Mr. Yarrow Kubrin.
Oh man! I need that soapbox
Yes.
so I can see. It's like
Well,
my
you know, so you
booster
can see
seat.
over the wheel. We all know. We all know.
Yeah.
You need the little blocks on the pedals. We know, Yarrow. We know how it is.
Jesus can take the wheel, but Kubrin still needs a booster seat for a podcast.
Exactly.
Totally get it. And speaking of money and real estate and cannabis real estate, super stoked inking 2 deals for acquiring 2 locations that are already dispensaries that are up and running for arguably one of the most known international brands in cannabis today. So things are working well, and super stoked to be here Monday morning, post Father's Day. My article today is a good one. It's a feel good. And so without further ado, let's kick this off. Article today is about Maryland. This is from ABC News. Maryland Governor Wes Moore is set to issue 175,000 pardons for marijuana convictions. Maryland Governor Wes Moore is scheduled to sign an executive order to issue more than 175,000 pardons for marijuana convictions. Maryland Governor Wes Moore is doing this on Monday. The governor's office said the administration is describing the pardons as the largest state pardon to date. The governor's actions regarding cases related to the use of paraphernalia make Maryland the first state to take such action, his office said. The pardons will forgive low-level marijuana possession charges for an estimated 100,000 people, according to the Washington Post, which first reported on the order Sunday night. Moore plans to sign the executive order today in the state capitol in Annapolis, with Maryland Attorney General Anthony Brown in attendance. Recreational cannabis was legalized in Maryland in 2023 after voters approved the constitutional amendment of 2022 with 67% of the vote. Maryland decriminalized possession of personal use of amounts of marijuana on January 1st, 2023, and now 24 states in the District of Columbia have legalized recreational cannabis. The Moore-Miller administration is committed to promoting social equity and ensuring the fair and equitable administration of justice, the governor's office said. Because the use and possession of cannabis is no longer illegal in the state, Marylanders should not continue to face barriers to housing, employment, or educational opportunities based on convictions for conduct that is no longer illegal. Brown, a Democrat, Jason. But anyway, Brown, he's a Democrat. But Brown
we know.
had described the pardons as certainly long overdue as a nation and a racial equity issue. While the pardons will extend to anyone and everyone with a misdemeanor conviction for the possession of marijuana or paraphernalia, this unequivocally, without any doubt or reservation, disproportionately impacts in a good way brown and black Marylanders, Brown said. More than 150,000 misdemeanor convictions for simple possession of cannabis will be affected by the order, which will also cover more than 18,000 misdemeanor convictions for use or possession with intent to use drug paraphernalia, according to a summary by the governor's office. The pardons reflect a number of convictions. Some individuals may have had more than one conviction pardoned through the process. The pardons will not result in anyone being released from incarceration. After Moore signs the pardon, the Maryland judiciary will ensure each individual electronic docket is updated with an entry indicating the conviction has been pardoned by the governor, a process that should take about 2 weeks, the governor's office said. The governor's order also directs the state corrections department to develop a process to indicate a pardon in an individual's criminal record, a process expected to take about 10 months to complete. The pardons absolve people from the guilt of a criminal offense, and individuals do not need to take any action to receive the pardon. A pardon is different from an expungement. Although the judiciary will make a note on the record that the offense has been pardoned, it will still show on the record. Expungement is a process by which a criminal conviction is destroyed and removed completely from the public record, which requires an additional step. So, before I kick off the commentary here and hand it over to all the other great panelists and pundits on today's show, allow me to just chime in with my little John what over the top of this article, because I wanted to cover this article, A, because I think it's incredibly good news, and B, I wanted to correct, I think, the way in which this article differentiates between an expungement and a pardon. We've seen a lot of expungement clinics popping up across the country to deal with previous cannabis-related offenses, and they are good, and I think they're a step in the right direction. But what I think this article fails to really identify is the massive advantage of a pardon over an expungement. And so I think I don't speak for all those convicted, but I think most people who are convicted would much rather have a pardon and the criminal offense stays on the record than an expungement where the record is removed, because an expungement doesn't restore the rights that you had in the way that a pardon does. We've covered a lot on this show about that intersection between gun ownership and medical cannabis patients and the problems a lot of medical cannabis patients have. An expungement would not restore somebody's Second Amendment gun rights. And so what I really appreciated about this article was the way in which they're doing this on a systematized, automated mass level. 2 weeks ago on this show, we covered a state that couldn't even get out of the gate. They had $4 million in a year to do some work, and they couldn't even figure it out. And they would just made excuses about how hard it was to hire people and to process all these things. This state is obviously creating a new model that I think everybody should aspire to be like. If you're a governor, you do it in a way that's systemized, automated. It doesn't require any input or participation on the part of these convicted people. And it is done with technology. It is done quickly. It takes 2 weeks for them to do it on their side, 10 months for the prison system to do it on their side. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bam. I think this is a wonderful step in the right direction. And this is not incrementalism. This is real change. This is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News, Monday morning.
I think this is great news overall, Yarrow. I mean, anytime that we have these types of things going on, I'm always excited for all the people that are going to benefit and be able to at least attempt to be able to get their life back on track or get their life back.
Yep.
Good step in the right direction for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, look at that.
Newsom, if you're listening, pardon me.
That's cute. That's cute. That's real cute, Yarrow. I see exactly what you did there.
Why not write a letter to Newsom with this article attached and say, look at how easy this would be. You should pardon me. Let's just see if you get a response.
You know, you're right. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Also, regrettably, my cannabis journey and the criminality that included was more than simple possession and possession of paraphernalia. Mm-hmm. And so even if Newsom did what this other state did, and I encourage California to take notes from Maryland, for people like myself, where production, distribution, and some of the other supply chain activities were a part of my experience, my convictions are a bit more egregious, one could argue. And I really do look forward to an era where I will be able to go duck hunting in the Sacramento Delta with my children. I can't do that with a bow and arrow. I would probably take a shotgun.
I can help you with that, Yarrow. I can help you with that.
I would very much appreciate the opportunity to have some of those experiences. And so I do think that this, thank you, and I'm going to say yes to you on that, Jason. I do think the pardon is the new, to me, sort of the basic level of how we undo those harms that were done during that era of prohibition. And so this, to me, is deeds. It's not words. It's not a press release. It's a full release, and it is actually being done in a way that is scaled and where they're using technology. I don't think this is going to cost them a lot of money to do, and they are not requiring any effort on the part of the public.
That's great.
They're doing the right thing.
Because you all know we can't rely on the general public, just like we can't rely on government either to actually do things. But
well, if you require, so it was proposed to do things like that. So one of the first district attorneys that pioneered this was a woman in the East Bay in Contra Costa County. Yep. And then San Francisco started doing some stuff like that. And then the district attorney of Sonoma County, Jill Ravitch, who is far from desirable, said, well, I can't do it. It's going to require all this time. All the defendants are going to have to come to the court, and it's going to clog up our courts, and blah, 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 blah. And so when you say we can't rely on the public, I think what I'm saying is that anytime you have the interactions with the public, You have to do outreach. You have to inform them. You have to let them know how that process works, and you have to pay people to interact with them. And all of that is just a waste of time and money. There's not a single person in the whole world that's going to say, no, I don't want a pardon. How dare you? And so why not just do it without people's involvement? Why not just do the right thing in the most efficient way possible? And I think Maryland has just set a very high bar.
They did set a high bar, and I'll tell you who else set a high bar in the chat is Steve Blassingham. Shout out, Steve. He says, why does Yarrow duck hunting give me visuals of an Elmer Fudd cartoon? Yes. And on that, we're going to go to a commercial, and we're going to be right back.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get a... Sorry, we had a brief malfunction. But nonetheless, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you hit that like button. I know you'll appreciate it. We'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you've not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show are already up on our website, so you can check them out and read them there. And also, there has been a lot of talk about this whole testing article that came out in conjunction with the LA Times and Weed Week. And we did our very first Sunday special report video in regards to this, a whole in-depth breakdown of this whole thing. And so make sure that you go over to our channel and check that out. We are just around 900 views on it already in less than 24 hours, so make sure you check that out. I'm Jason Beck, and this is Smoky Vanilla. And if you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to get a stretch and smoke with Smoky Vanilla.
Hi, I'm Smoky Vanilla. I have my bachelor's degree in kinesiology, and I'm a sports massage therapist and stretch coach. I focus mostly on individuals that are in sport with chronic pain or injury. I love to intuitively create and customize a session based on the individual that I'm working with. We'll go over a few postural assessments, work together to create a wellness journey based on the health history, past injuries, or anything still affecting you today. And we'll get you back on your feet right away with less pain.
We're about to stretch, and then we're gonna smoke, because we're gonna get on our stretch and smoke. If you want to feel as good as I look, then you need to come on down and get a stretch and smoke with none other than Smoky Vanilla. All right, coming up next, that's right, it is Miss Jamie Pearson. She's the former CEO of Bang, and she is now the CEO of New Holland Group, who specializes, that's right, in shipping cannabis to Europe. That's right. She is known for big export game, and that's right, is none other than Miss Jamie Pearson.
Hi, everybody. This is Jamie Pearson reporting from Montana on the High at 9 News. And today's article is about people's use of alcohol or opioids causes greater secondhand harm than marijuana consumption does, study finds. This is in Marijuana Moment. Ben Adlin is the journalist. A new study of thousands of people nationwide suggests that secondhand harm caused by marijuana use is far less prevalent than that of alcohol, with respondents reporting secondhand harm from drinking at nearly 6 times the rate they did for cannabis. Perceived harms from opioids and other drugs also outweighed those related to cannabis. Looking at responses from 7,799 people to the 2020 U.S. National Alcohol Survey, researchers found that more than a third, 34.2%, said they'd experienced secondhand harms related to alcohol use over the course of their lives. Just 5.5%, meanwhile, said they'd never experienced secondhand harms related to cannabis. As for other substances, 7.6% of people said they'd ever been harmed by others' use of opioids, while 8.3% reported ever experiencing harm from unspecified other drugs. When respondents were asked about just the past 12-month period, alcohol still caused the most secondhand harm, with 6.2% of people saying they'd been harmed by others' use. Next were other drugs, 2.2%, opioids, 2%, and then cannabis, 1.8%. Our estimates for secondhand drug harms were lower than anticipated, given the ongoing opioid overdose crisis and the trend toward recreational cannabis legalization, the authors from the Alcohol Research Group and RTI International wrote in the study, which was published in the Journal of Studies on Alcohol and Drugs. They also noted that the experience of secondhand harms from substance use differed among groups of people. People who were female, white, and had a history of alcohol problems and were separated, divorced, or widowed reported significantly more secondhand harms. Those harms included family and marriage difficulties, traffic accidents, vandalism, physical harm, and financial difficulties. As for cannabis, a higher prevalence of secondhand harm was found among Black people, though authors note that harms may stem from punitive policies around cannabis rather than the drug itself. This may derive, at least in part, from systemic differences, they wrote. Black individuals are more likely than their white counterparts to face legal repercussions from cannabis use and to be randomly drug tested, resulting in financial harms, for example, paying legal fees after an arrest, losing a job, and family difficulties, for example, marital disputes and stress, having children taken away, that could negatively impact those around them. Notably, the analysis found that people who used alcohol themselves had marginally higher odds of reporting secondhand alcohol harms, which authors say could be because heavier drinkers are more frequently exposed to other heavy drinkers. In contrast, they continued, people who use cannabis frequently had significantly lower odds of reporting secondhand cannabis harm, which also is consistent with previous findings. Despite far more respondents reporting secondhand harm from alcohol than from cannabis or other drugs, however, authors repeatedly questioned the participants' responses could not be trusted. Regarding the finding that cannabis users reported lower secondhand cannabis harms, for example, they suggested it could be because cannabis use frequently co-occurs with both alcohol and opioids, and respondents may be more likely to attribute harms to alcohol or opioids than to cannabis. They also said the lower reported rates of harm from cannabis and other drugs may be due to the stigmatization of reporting harm from drug use or because of types of harm they cause. Both cannabis and opioids are less linked with violence than alcohol, authors wrote. As such, secondhand harms associated with these substances may be less discernible than those for alcohol. For example, more amenity harms like trash in the neighborhood or being bothered or scared by those under the influence versus physical harms, and therefore are not as easily recalled by respondents. Further, those impacted by secondhand harms from someone else's substance use may self-blame, especially if they also use substances, they added. This is potentially worsened in the context of opioids or other drugs, which are more stigmatized than alcohol. Authors say that new research is meant to broaden the understanding of drug-related harms by attempting to measure and explain harm not to drug users themselves, but to friends and family of people who use drugs. We often don't consider how alcohol and drug use affects people other than the person using them. Study lead Erica Rosen, a postdoctoral fellow at ARG, said in a press release, "It's critical to understand how far these harms extend into the community so we can develop more effective policies and interventions to better support both the individual and those around them." Legalization advocates, meanwhile, say the study's findings affirm what past research has already shown. It's well established that cannabis public health effects are far less than those associated with the use of alcohol. Paul Armentano, a deputy director for NORML, said in a blog post about the new report, and most adults now acknowledge this reality. That's despite growing evidence that frequent marijuana use is now more common among Americans than regular alcohol use. A recent study found that more Americans now consume cannabis every day than drink alcohol on a daily basis. Since '92, it found that per capita rate of daily cannabis consumption in the country has increased nearly 15 times over. A multinational investment bank said in a report late last year that cannabis has become a formidable competitor to alcohol, projecting that nearly 20 million more people will regularly consume cannabis over the next 5 years as booze loses a couple million drinkers. It also says cannabis sales are estimated to reach $37 billion in 2027 in the U.S. as more state markets come online. Data from the Gallup survey published last August also found that Americans consider cannabis to be less harmful than alcohol, cigarettes, vapes, and other tobacco products. Another study out of Canada, where cannabis is federally legal, found that legalization was associated with a decline in beer sales, suggesting a substitution effect. Separate research published earlier this year found that the use of cannabis alone was not associated with higher risk of a car crash, while alcohol, whether used by itself or combined with cannabis, showed a clear correlation with the increased odds of collision. Marijuana Moment is made possible with support from our readers. I think that's the end. So what do you guys think?
Well, I mean, overall, I feel like this is good news overall. I mean, they're saying that that cannabis lowers the risk of opioid use, and am I correct on this, Jamie?
What it's saying is that the use of alcohol or opioids causes more harm to other people, secondhand people, so friends and family of the people using or abusing the alcohol or the opioids, than does cannabis. So
okay. So they're saying that because people you don't have like overdose deaths or things like that from cannabis that you do have with opioids, then therefore the harm that it causes immediate family members is reduced because of the fact. Is that basically a good summary?
I think that's an element of it. And okay. I'll use my personal experience. I have a dad who has been growing cannabis. I'm 55, so 57 years. Mm-hmm. He's got PTSD, did 2 tours in Vietnam, and he does not drink alcohol. But he has smoked cannabis my entire life, and he smokes cannabis every single day. And swear to God, in our house, if he comes out of the bedroom and he's got that look on his face, we're like, go have a safety meeting. Mm-hmm. My mom was addicted to alcohol, and she got sober when I was a junior in high school. Her drinking had far more negative impact on our family than my dad's cannabis use ever did. And that's the point. When my mom would get drunk, we were not safe in the car. Things just didn't get done, mm-hmm. or, she just didn't get her work done. My dad is more productive when he uses cannabis than he is without it. So I think that the secondhand harm that we experienced in our family with my mom using alcohol, just from personal experience, I can tell you, I would much rather be a parent using cannabis than a parent using alcohol raising children. It makes my dad more present. It makes him happy. He's not running around punching holes in the walls and, things like that. So I just think that that's what they're talking about. The domestic violence, the traffic, tickets, the impact of what happens if you get caught, the days in jail, all of that. I mean, I just think a lot of people, like my dad I don't know. Mm-hmm. It'll be controversial, but I'm just going to tell you, I feel safer around my dad when he's high than when he's not.
I mean, at the same time, this just kind of goes along with a lot of the other studies that we've been covering the past couple of weeks, where it just commonly shows that cannabis use does not cause that type of irrational, sporadic behavior, that unpredictableness. Like most people just want to chill, have a good time, enjoy themselves. It doesn't create those emotional initial knee-jerk reactions that people get when they're on alcohol and other substances.
Well, alcohol affects your nervous system, which is a completely different effect. Your inhibitions come down, your instincts are not your instincts, but your reflexes get slower. And, you hear people and they're drunk and they're like, they can't form a thought, but
It is a performance enhancing drug for karaoke, though. Let's be clear.
Oh boy. Fair enough. If karaoke was a sport.
Karaoke is an extreme sport, and the way I do it, it's full contact. do not make me break out the solo.
Please, yeah, we don't have time for that.
Song.
That's a whole different
What's
show,
your
Yarrow.
karaoke?
Whole different show, Yarrow. We got to keep this train
It's
rolling.
probably some sort of melodic ballad from the Scorpions or something really almost as old as me. But you could appreciate them because they're German and amazing. I think this article is really interesting in so much as it continues to reinforce other articles, other information that we have had. It's a steady drumbeat of messaging in the same direction. Not one of these articles has been some groundbreaking game changer, but what we've seen is a steady, productive, progressive drumbeat of information that supports the same position. That's kind of how science sometimes works. And so there was no aha moment in this for me. It was, you're darn right. And we knew this. And some of us already felt this. And now we're getting more science to support what we sort of felt and believed. Thank you, Jamie, to your dad for his military service. And the example that you used about the way in which cannabis was incredibly helpful for him is probably more pronounced in somebody who has spent time in those types of incredibly inhospitable environments, and the way in which it has shaped their coping mechanisms afterwards. And it's interesting for us to compare through your lens that experience of being raised by two parents, one who was smoking a lot of cannabis and the other who was maybe drinking too many martinis, and the way as a child how that impacted you. That's very powerful first person I statements, and I'm grateful that you brought that to today's show.
All right, we got to keep this train rolling. We're way over time today. We're way over time.
Okay, everybody, I'm signing out.
Have a great day, Jamie. Have an amazing day, Jamie. And we're going to roll right into Mr. Mathieu St. Germain. He is the immortal Transylvanian count that has been walking this planet for years upon years and generations upon generations. And he still looks the same. That's right. It is the immortal one himself, Mr. Mathieu St. Germain.
Thank you, Brother Jason. Thanks, everybody. Slavisa, Jamie, hope you have a great day. My guess, whoa, look how green that screen is, you guys.
Yeah.
My guess is that this one is going to piss a bunch of people off, but I'm okay with that.
I love that.
Story not itself, but my commentary. I wore my villain mustache for just this purpose.
That's why you didn't shave today.
Massachusetts Senate approves bill to study psychedelic therapy for military veterans. That's good news. Massachusetts Senate has approved a bill focused on military veterans that includes provisions to create a psychedelics working group, study and make recommendations about the potential therapeutic benefits of substances like psilocybin and MDA. I swear I don't stutter, you guys. About a month after the House approved its version of the legislation based on a proposal initially introduced by Governor Maura Healey, Senate unanimously approved an amended version of a separate House measure. The two chambers must now reconcile these bills before their final version goes to the governor's desk. Honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans, HERO Act, is a wide-ranging proposal focused on veterans, but it's cleared both chambers in different forms with the psychedelics policy reform provisions attached. House version was also amended earlier to include a section that would create a pilot program to examine medical cannabis as an opioid alternative for veterans. Psychedelics measures wouldn't immediately create a framework for legal access, but would require the Executive Office of Veteran Services to convene a working group to study alternative therapies for veterans. The panel would need to evaluate literature, research trials, and expert opinion, determine if psychedelic therapy is associated with improved outcomes regarding mental health treatment for veterans. And it would be required to issue recommendations regarding the provision of psychedelic therapy to treat veterans with mental health disorders in the state of Massachusetts. Today, we reaffirmed our commitment here in Massachusetts to protect, empower, and support those who have sacrificed for our nation and return home, Senator Adam Gomez said. By increasing their health care and mental health benefits, promoting businesses to hire veterans, and expanding support service for active veterans and their families, start to make inroads on issues that have a direct impact on the lives of our service members, benefiting them and families. Passage of the HERO Act comes after a Massachusetts Joint Legislative Committee advised the legislature not to pass a broader psychedelics legalization initiative. Activists are in the process of collecting additional signatures to put that back on the ballot. Lawmakers were required to consider the psychedelics measure after the state certified advocates had submitted enough valid signatures in an initial petitioning year. Last month, Special Joint Committee on Ballot Initiatives issued a majority report that formally recommended against passing the measures drafted. Campaign first filed 2 different psychedelics reform initiatives in August, and after the state attorney general determined that they both met the constitutional requirement for ballot placement, activists decided to pursue the version that included a home cultivation option. 8 cities across Massachusetts have enacted policies to locally deprioritize law enforcement against psychedelics. And meanwhile, a different Massachusetts legislative committee has advanced a bill in February that would legalize psilocybin therapy in the Commonwealth and set up a framework to license facilitators who would supervise medical, therapeutic, and spiritual applications of the drug. So, all in all, these bills are good news, and there's a lot of good movement coming from Massachusetts. I just have a quick editorial commentary on all of this, and it's really fitting in most of the news brought forth today on today's show, as well as Jamie's share. We need to really caution against using psychedelics and cannabis as another tool to continue to push forward and propel these expeditionary wars of U.S. and Western European corporate global hegemony. What does that mean? It means corporate control of the resources of this planet. A really dark act of sorcery took place on September 11th, 2001. If anybody can remember before that, the American public was anti-war. We didn't support our troops going over on these expeditionary wars, and the CIA and special forces had to do it really under the cover of darkness because the American people weren't supporting it. The moment people, Osama bin Laden and his crew, who were funded and trained by George Bush Sr. as the Mujahideen in Afghanistan fighting against the Soviet Union in a false Cold War that was propelled and the money loaned on by bankers on both sides, for the purpose of continuing the military-industrial prison complex's control of the planet Earth, right? The moment those guys flew those planes into those towers, all of a sudden, we have to thank the troops. We have to respect the troops. I would say we have not been thanking or respecting the troops by sending them illegal expeditionary wars to murder and assassinate people in order for control of their resources. That's not a way to respect somebody. And just saying thank you to someone after you've basically sent them somewhere to murder innocent people and given them a life of being haunted by demons in their dreams of these people that they have murdered and in some cases tortured. That's not a way to thank or respect anybody. So I think we need to take these blinders off. We need to stop just repeating things that we hear in the news media and take a look at what is actually happening. As Yarrow said, the last war that you could even talk about being slightly just would be the U.S.'s entry into World War II. And we murdered millions of Japanese people we didn't need to murder. The Japanese already wanted to surrender. We wanted to drop nuclear bombs on them to impress Europe and the Soviet Union and basically show everybody that we were the big dog on the planet. And so since then, all we've been involved in are expeditionary wars of the CIA and corporate, basically U.S., French, and British corporate energy company interests. Wars in Nicaragua where we funded right-wing fascist paramilitary death squads and torture squads. Assassination of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran because he wanted to nationalize oil. Institution of the Shah, who was the king, and the funding of the Savak, which is the Iranian secret police, and the training by U.S. Special Forces of the Savak how to rape the Iranian populace with German shepherds. Yes, that really happened, and you can see it from Freedom of Information Acts. Vietnam War, which was a cover for Air America's smuggling of heroin to Afghanistan. The invasion of Afghanistan, which was another cover. Notice the Taliban had almost completely eliminated the heroin trade, the opium poppy trade. The moment we came in there, and you can go back and Google right now, and you can see NBC, Fox News, and MSN reports of American troops guarding poppy fields because we needed these people as our allies in this war that we basically manufactured with the CIA. And then as soon as America gets in, opium poppy trade is now 4 times as big as it ever was under the Taliban or before. What we need to do, and it's okay if you hate me, I'm totally cool with it. I'm going to continue to sound this alarm. Sending our best and brightest overseas murder people who don't even care or know about us, who live in thatched roof wooden buildings and mud huts, who have no ability to get to America to harm us, so that we can continue to control their oil, to control their lithium, to control their cobalt, to control how they apportion their resources for their people. Instead of thanking our soldiers for going over and murdering those people, Let's thank our soldiers by keeping them at home to create food forests in American cities, to help and heal and shepherd the homeless, to build low-cost housing for the people that are building shanty towns that used to be called Hoovervilles in the Great Depressions, rebuild the bridges, to rebuild the roads, to do actual good things for America and then the world. And we start thanking our service members by not asking them unjustly murder people around the world, and by actually respecting them and helping them to live a good and wholesome life. Let's not use psychedelics as a patch or a spackle for the current corporate slave model we have in the U.S. that's driving everybody to bankruptcy and for these endless wars. Let's use psychedelics, wake up the fact that we are a human family, and only when we all have a seat at the table will anything be able to be fixed. Let's use psychedelics to grow our intelligence. Let's use psychedelics to grow our compassion. Let's begin to reject fear, embrace love, grab one another by the hand, and create a new future on this earth together as the human family that we are. Jason and Yarrow, I would love to hear what you have to say.
Man, Mathieu St, Germain, I feel like you took all the words out of my mouth.
Off the top rope. I'm sure the chat is full of people who are like, fuck that commie. What can I say?
Oh, man.
I'm all for love. I'm all against war.
I'm all for love, and you know you do bring up some super interesting points that I think a lot of people kind of tend to forget because we've been in this. You are right. There was a mass feeling across the country totally against war. Like I remember, like when we went to the Iraq war, there was people out there protesting. No blood for oil was like the big protest sign back then during that time. I mean, I remember they were marching and they even closed down the Bay Bridge for like a day or something for a period of time. They were all so angry about this. But you were so right. 9/11 changed everything as far as everyone's thought process and perspective, and you know the world did change that day. You're 100% right about that, Mathieu St. Germain.
But the crazy thing is that even though most people realize 9/11 was some sort of CIA operation, immediately just absorb the next lesson, which is support the troops, send them everywhere to murder people who believe in Islam. And while I have a problem with all Abrahamic religions and really want to see their eventual dissolution through the evolution of human consciousness, I do not support us going and again, murdering anybody. But what I would like to say is I also support the troops in their role as human beings. I think the majority of people who were sent overseas to murder people for America were gamed upon by that same corporate military interest. They were put in situations where they had no other options. Most of them weren't educated by our failing school systems in such a way that they didn't even know what they were doing. And to them, the military was a way out of their hometown, was a way for money for college. And I think those people were taken advantage of. So if you have served in the military, do not bear you ill will. I am in solidarity with you, but I beg for you to tell people what happened to you, that more people do not enlist. We can just reorganize this country. I, for one, would like to see America go back to a pre-World War I somewhat isolationist model where we focus on our own country, our own citizens. And once we have a healthy and intelligent citizen base and a clean country wherein people are working together to improve our lot in life, we could then scale that up and we could begin sharing that with the world instead of just sharing laser-guided Tomahawk missiles. People don't even know where America is. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday, right? Yarrow, you have anything you want to say on this? Go for it.
Yeah, I do, which is I like that veterans tend to be the group that is the recipient first of experimental medical treatment modalities. And I think it's important that all people recognize the difference between military policy versus military personnel. And I think we need to also understand the difference in the way that we express our patriotism. My hope is that we can support anybody who chooses to serve, because I still think there is nobility in a career path of civil service, while also understanding that it is equally, if not more patriotic, to criticize our government's policies in the way that they choose to use and deploy our military personnel. And so I think that if we really want to support our troops, we don't just randomly thank that stranger for their service when we see them in uniform in an airport, but we advocate for greater benefits for those people when they get back, more career training, transition support, a better functioning VA, the ability for people to access cannabis through the VA, and that those of you out there who have the opportunity to hire people also consider people who've served as a plus in who you have join your team. I have always done that. Even when we were renegades growing cannabis, I did find that people who had some of those skills that they gained through the training that they had, that the government paid for, was beneficial in my business and in our endeavors. So I love that we're doing this type of research. I still think that we're just nibbling around the edges. I still think that war creates broken people who need a lot of assistance in healing their hearts and minds. And we're just now beginning to understand that. In World War II, they had a different name for PTSD. World War I, rather, it was like, they called it like
shell shock.
Shell shock. Thank you. And so we've known for 100 years that when people come back from these really traumatic experiences, that they are not the same. And so let's just remember that when we support people for their service, we support people for their service in the way that we demand our tax dollars be allocated. And so any research that helps that category of people, I think, is worth supporting. And I don't think it's a partisan issue.
So, Yarrow, I'd like to just push back and say that if you are supporting people who are going and murdering innocent people overseas, you are a de facto supporter of murder, and that would make you an accessory to murder. And if you could please present to me one of these wars, either one that we know about on the news, or one like Syria, where our special forces are involved daily in the murder, torture, and kidnapping of people. If you could find one of these and explain how it has furthered the interest and the safety of America, I would be interested and willing to listen. However, if I support someone, go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, or as an advisor in Ukraine or Africa, murder people I've never met, the continued corporate control of resources, how is that a moral or ethical act? I would say the way we support the troops is by asking them, as you did, to claim conscientious objector status, stop taking part in murder of innocent. The power of the U.S. and British global financial system. That is what is happening. Popular opinion, I know.
Yeah, but look, I mean, and I'm gonna answer that, but probably in a way that doesn't make you happy, which is to just point out that the military, our armed services do a lot more than just that. And so if there's a humanitarian crisis, you tend to see people in camouflage assisting, no matter where the border is and no matter what country just got decimated by a hurricane. If there's a massive virus outbreak in some country in Africa that you only learned about in high school geography, it's not uncommon to see the military rise to those occasions. So there are great things that have been done with this massive tool, this instrument that has been stood up. And so it's not to justify the wrongs, but I think it would be not a complete picture to not also point out the successes we've had as a result of the training, the material, and the equipment that our armed forces represents and is. It's a humongous tool. And so when there are crises, our country has sent those people to respond to those crises without care for borders and boundaries and petrochemical interests. And so I'm never going to justify the landmines. I'm never going to justify the napalm. I'm never going to justify the things that we all know are happening and that U.S. citizens are participating and a part of those problems. I just don't know that that's all that gets done. And there is an argument that having a standing army in a world where we can't count on the benevolent intentions of every other country's leader. We've got 200 countries or something in the world. There is an argument that a standing army is a necessary evil.
Yeah.
So if I've got a club, and we help old ladies across the street 6 days out of the week, and then 1 day out of the week we do home invasion robberies and torture and murder people to death, is that a cool club? I would say that would be
a super extreme example, but I understand what you're trying to say.
No, I'm making an analogy, because here's the deal: is like, yes, the U.S. occasionally does help some other countries. We could do that in a non-military fashion. Our National Guard is incredibly helpful when we're not sending them to Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and Ukraine to murder people. Our National Guard has helped Americans. We could separate those two. Roles and keep one and medicine the other. And the reason for my analogy, Jason, is it doesn't matter how many people you help in Mississippi. If you are murdering people around the world, what you are doing is creating long-term enemies. Again, what we want to do is not just repeat jingoistic slogans. Look into what is happening and why, and ways we can go about fixing it. I know we're going overtime.
Yes.
That's it. If you want to send hate to St. Germain, it's teampleasant@gmail.com. You can tell me that you wish I would die and you have a voodoo doll of me. I love you. I support you. What I am looking to do is
the only doll I have of you is inflatable, and I get a lot of use out of it, big boy.
Whoa.
I'm just looking to spark conversation and intelligence and piss people off or inspire them enough that they go and read and educate themselves and bring some facts to the discussion so that I too can become smarter. We can have better discussions in the interest of peace.
I'm gonna tell you this much, that there definitely are a lot of bad people in the world that have very, very bad intentions for us, and we definitely need a military in regards to ward off from those types of threats. And at the same time too, we can't always focus on making the bad the enemy of the good. But nonetheless, I have one last story for you guys this morning. And I think you're going to like this. I think you guys are going to like this. A Vermont marijuana company questions authority of Cannabis Control Board, you guys. That's right. A Vermont cannabis company ordered to halt operations is questioning the authority of the state board that gave the order. Derby-based Holland Cannabis is currently fighting to stay in business after the Vermont Cannabis Control Board found positive tests for a banned substance in their product. Now the question is, how much power does the board have to penalize these companies? In a quote, the legislative intent was, we're doing this for the public safety and consumer health. Those are our guiding principles always, says James Pepper, the chair of the Vermont Cannabis Control Board. In 2023, the Cannabis Control Board investigated Holland Cannabis after a Vermonter reported getting sick from consuming pot grown by the company. Lab test results showed the pot sold in 5 retail locations contained a prohibited pesticide called Eagle 20. In a filing to the board, Holland Cannabis denies responsibility for that contamination, but the company is also disputing the authority that the board has to take punitive action against them. In a quote, the order to stop sale and the order to stop growing, we think violates the due process laws under the United States Constitution and under the Vermont Constitution, said Stuart Revo, the attorney for Holland Cannabis. In their defense, Holland Cannabis points to a letter from the governor to lawmakers last session on a bill regarding the future of the Cannabis Control Board, in which Governor Phil Scott raises concerns about separation of powers. In his letter, the governor wrote, in quote, the legislature has no authority to delegate the constitutional power of the governor to an entity that is now permanently independent of the executive branch and is therefore not accountable to the people of Vermont. But Pepper calls that constitutional argument meritless. He says the legislative legality gave the board authority over licensing, regulation, and enforcement. And in a quote says, in order to achieve that well-regulated system, we need to have consequences for our actions. Of course, the most severe consequence, one that we don't enjoy using, is to revoke or suspend a license, Pepper said. Lawmakers who were at the table when the retail market was created say they needed to be able to hold cultivators accountable, and in a quote, the Liquor Control Board has the ability to pull a license if people are misbehaving. I believe we wouldn't have called it a control board if we didn't intend for them to have that ability, said Jeanette White, a former Vermont senator. Following the hearing in the front of the Cannabis Control Board this week, Holland Cannabis will now have to wait at least 10 days for a written decision on whether their license will be revoked. And their attorney says should they not get the outcome they want, they could appeal as high as the Supreme Court, you guys. Well, look at this. This guy got caught using Eagle 20. Now, I don't condone Eagle 20, but I do condone them pushing back in the fact that they are trying to revoke this guy's license. But nonetheless, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
Smoking Eagle 20 has been shown to cause testicular cancer. Mm-hmm. Fuck that guy.
And my balls are hurting just thinking about the fact that somebody did this voluntarily and probably knowing darn well. I mean, this is the
I agree with that.
It's sprinkling E. coli over your Michelin-starred meals as they go out the pass at your restaurant. This is putting humans in harm's way. I actually don't think that there needs to be ample due process if there has already been a determination of fact. And I think that anytime people are prioritizing profits over people in a way that harms people, and where we already know it's not even a debate about whether Eagle 20 is okay.
It's definitely not okay to sell, or it's definitely not okay to sell.
To me, this is one of those fucked up and found out. Like, you lost your license. I'm not sorry for anybody who does this. Just like I'm not sorry for any convicted rapist, no matter how much time has passed. I'm not sorry for people who use Eagle 20 in 2024. In 1997, when we didn't know better, there was an era where we put things on our plants, or we thought that, because it was an Omni-rated product, we could just foliar to fuck with everything. But we can't do that. And if this person did it, I don't think ignorance is a defense. And so the only way you get to keep your license if you do something like this would be to say that ignorance is a defense. Well, Jason, you don't believe that ignorance is a defense. You don't believe that just because somebody didn't know the rules of the road, they're allowed to drive on the wrong side of the road or to not have their taillights work. And so I think people like this don't deserve any compassion, any grace, or any second chances.
You're here.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. We all have some agreement. I mean, I do find it. I do like the fact that he is pushing back on the state powers in this board, and I'm definitely going to have some popcorn out for this. But I do think that you should definitely not be selling Eagle 20 to patients, to anyone, even in people in good health. You know what I mean? For that matter. But I do think that the market should just stop going to this place, and he should get shut down due to financial reasons and not be able to operate his business, as opposed to the state just pulling his license.
let me just listen, I know we're over time, and let me just say I don't give a fuck, okay? When you question the authority of the board, your punk ass didn't question the authority of the board when they gave you a permit that allowed you to sell legal weed.
That's true.
So now that they are going to take your permit for being a fucking numbnut, now you want to question their authority? That's trying to have your cake and eat it too. I don't co-sign that kind of behavior. And I also don't think that we need additional litigation. I don't think we need operators. Like, pick and choose your battles. And to me, this is a thoroughly self-serving battle. There's no greater good in questioning the authority and wondering how that can serve the rest of the operators. So this person, 2 thumbs down, they're not getting a golden ticket. They're not going on to Hollywood.
Fair enough. Any final thoughts on this, Mathieu St. Germain, before we get out of here?
I'm going totally sideways. Read The Devil's Chessboard. It's a biography of Alan Dulles. It starts with Alan Dulles in the OSS forming the CIA, smuggling all the Nazi intelligence officers over here to start the CIA and the NSA. Oh, basically, America is the Fourth Reich. And to your comment, Jason, about bad people around the world who hate us, you can read in this book directly why all of these people hate us. It is a story of the assassination.
I'm not saying that there's people inside.
Story of the assassination of people's leaders, funding of death squads, the training of torture. You can see in this one book how the CIA fomented global disease and all of these revolutions, empowered the Islamic Revolution so that we could continue to steal the oil from the Middle East. Next, read Operation Chaos and learn about how the CIA gave meth to bikers and flooded San Francisco with speed in order to destroy the Summer of Love. And Google COINTELPRO, Operation Chaos, and learn about how the FBI, our secret police, has been working with the CIA to destroy the black and brown communities, steal people's resources the world over, and you tell me what the answer. Jason, I love you. Thank you for allowing me my digressions.
Of course.
Sarah, I love you as well. Everybody out there, whether you love or hate me, I love you. There's nothing you can do about it.
Fair enough. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big thank you to our audience and supporters for always tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Catalyst. Huge thank you to Yarrow, Mathieu St, Germain, Jamie, everyone today being truly amazing. Thank you for Cannabis for giving us a reason to do this. And thank you to Cloud Media Partners. And, of course, we got Millie in the building today. Thank you, Millie, so much. And thank you all at home for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.